Hello, we're live on YouTube. Hi, I'm Keith F. Shovelin, publisher and chief creative of aois21. Hold on just a second while I get us set up on Periscope as well. All right, there we go. Now we are live on Periscope, live on YouTube. Welcome to the March 2017 edition of Ask aois21 on the 21st. I apologize we didn't have a chance to do one last month. I was feeling a little bit under the weather. Didn't feel like the right time, but here we are. We're back. It's a new month. Spring is here. Finally, spring is here. Not that we haven't had our share of warm weather here in the DC area over the month of February, and then suddenly winter reminded us that it was still here. But now winter's over. Of course, now they're forecasting a possibility of snow here in the DC area, but we'll see. So, for those of you that haven't joined these webcasts before, I typically have a topic that I like to discuss while I'm waiting for people to write in questions. If you're on YouTube, there's the group chat. You can just go ahead and post your questions right there. Periscope, if you're watching live on Periscope, you just send the questions right there on the screen and I will see them. Then, of course, we're on Twitter at aois21, aois21. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/aois21. So you can send your questions right there on Twitter, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Facebook. You can tweet to me directly at kfshovelin. I'll gladly answer any questions you might have. We've had some pretty good conversations in the past about books, what I'm reading, what I like to read. So now's your time. The main purpose of this webcast, usually though, we're trying to reach out to those who are interested in self-publishing and give them a chance to ask questions of a publisher. I've been running a publishing company for going on 3 years now, actually over 3 years now. I started as a self-publisher myself, self-publishing my novel Post Soliloquy back in 2010 after spending 5 years writing it and editing. Then 2 years later, I released a second book, novella, as an ebook only, Life's Penance. And from what I learned from that, I turned it into my own publishing company, aois21. We now have 13 authors signed, 17 books available. There will be 2 more books coming out this summer, American Presidents at War by Thomas P. Atheridge and The Will of the Magi by Paul Dickinson Russell. Plus, we'll have more stuff on there. We plan on having another poetry collection coming out this fall. The next book in the Hive series we hope to be signing to release soon. And of course, our birthday party is coming up on May 8th, so we will be sharing information on that as we get prepared for that. Now, that will be a live stream event on Periscope and on YouTube for you to be able to take part in. We haven't booked the location just yet, but that should be happening shortly. Interesting. Okay. So like I said, tweet to us at aois21 on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskAois21. Ooh. Sure. All right. Suddenly a frog in my throat. I just drank a whole glass of water. Interesting. Okay. So my topic this month I want to talk about. Now, one thing we do at aois21. aois21, obviously, we make sure we spotlight the 21st of every month. That's why we do the webcast on the 21st. We used to do it at 9 p.m., which is 2100 hours, but we moved it up a little bit to partner with the ePress 21 webinar at 8 p.m. But we always ask on all of our Facebook pages and on Twitter, it's the 21st of this month, what are you reading this month? So that's what I want to hear about to those of you watching right now. What are you reading? Now, obviously, I have a preference that you read some of the great books we have from aois21, but I understand that there's a lot of great books out there. There isn't just what aois21 has to offer. And I know personally, I've read most of the books for aois21. The ones that haven't come out yet, I haven't really read yet. because they're still in the editing process. But I also have a very voracious appetite for books. I got into a trend late last year of really digging into audiobooks. I already was pretty hardcore in the podcasts. I listened to over a dozen different podcasts regularly throughout. Well, some are weekly, some are monthly, some are whenever that they feel like it. And then, of course, any of the 7 AS21 podcasts. And not only do I produce them, but I do listen to each episode after it goes out. But so I've become really gotten into listening to audiobooks because I know I love listening to music, but after I'm done listening to podcasts, I'm still in that feeling of want stories. And so I got into first an Audible account at one point, and then I learned that through my public library here in Fairfax County, Virginia, you could borrow audiobooks using the Overdrive app. And then I'm able to listen to audiobooks. I have them on a 21-day rental. They're not mine to keep, like you have when you buy books on Audible. But pretty much I enjoy these books and share them. My goal for this year is to try to read 50 books. I'm currently at 26 and it's only March. So it goes to show how quickly I'm burning through my audiobooks. I just finished today The Hemmingses of Monticello, a nonfiction book looking into the lives of slaves at Monticello under Thomas Jefferson, particularly those including Sally Hemings, the woman he took as his de facto wife. And some people say allegedly, but I believe, having read this book and seeing a lot of the other evidence, that it's pretty clear, but that's my opinion. But so I finished that today and started Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I had been going back and forth. I try to go nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction, fiction, so that I can both entertain and educate myself through reading. If you've watched these webcasts before, you may notice that I have also slimmed down a bit. I've been on over the past year, I've been on a lifestyle change that has allowed me to lose over 115 pounds. And so basically 2016 kind of became my year of basically putting aside a lot of the stuff that really wasn't that great for me, both health-wise and physically and mentally. So I watch less TV now. I work out more. I walk a lot. You see, today alone, 11 miles walking, and just trying to enrich myself. And part of that has been my real jump into really getting into reading audiobooks or listening to audiobooks. But then, of course, I read books as well. Currently, I'm reading 3 books currently because as I said, I just started listening to Moonstone by Wilkie Collins today. But also, I read to my children every night. We're on the superhero high series of books. We just started Supergirl at Superhero High by Lisa Yee. We had already read the Wonder Woman book, and next up will be Batgirl, and then the Katana book when it comes out. And then I've been slowly getting through it, but reading on my phone the ebook of Stand on Zanzibar by John Bruner. So that's been a very slow process getting through that because of the interesting it's a book written in 1968 projecting the far-off future of 2010. And surprisingly, he got a few things right. So, but he didn't get the language as well. So it's very hard trying to keep up with some of the slang he came up with. But those are the books I'm reading right now. As I said, I've read 26 books over the past 3 months now. And that obviously goes from the children's books like the superhero high ones, but also back and forth between fiction and nonfiction. I was trying to focus on reading women writers this month, even though I have had a healthy amount of women writers in there. I read Felicia Day's book and the most recent book by Carrie Fisher so far this year, as well as Anna Kendrick's memoir. But this month specifically, I'm reading Hemmings of Monticello, What a Night by Joyce Carol Oates. Or not What a Night. I'm not. I think I got the title of that book wrong, and I'm going to have to look it up to make sure. Uh, then Planets by Dava Sobel. The my next nonfiction book is going to be Doris Kearns Goodwin. At least that's the current plan. Once I finish Moonstone, which I understand it's not a woman writer. Wilkie Collins is not a woman, but that it pretty much came down to I had finished the Hemingses book today, and I needed a fiction book, and I didn't have any women writers in my queue, so I jumped to the first one available. All right, let's see. Red. Why? Okay, huh. For some reason I had Moonglow by Michael Chabon as read already, and I haven't read it yet. Sorry, I'm just trying to find. Organize this by date read. Okay, so Hemingway's Monticello, American Family by Annette Gordon Reed. Just finished that today. Wild Nights, stories about the last days of Poe, Dickinson, Twain, James, and Hemingway by Joyce Carol Oates. Before that, The Planets by Dava Sobel. And I've ended February by reading through, I went Pope Francis, Name of God is Mercy, Neil Gaiman, The Graveyard Book, Thomas Paine, Rights of Man, Underground Airlines by Ben Winters. That was very interesting. I like diving into alternative histories from time to time. I'm a big fan of Man in the High Castle on Amazon. So it was interesting reading Underground Airlines. And I'd be interested in seeing, I know he's interested in doing a television show of that. So I'm interested in seeing that if it happens. So yeah, let me know. What are you reading? Are you reading, or what's what's the most recent book you read, or the most recent book that you loved, or even the most recent book you hated? In fact, the hated's probably the more interesting one because why? Most recent book I hated. I wouldn't say I actually hated it. It's just I kind of torture myself getting through it. And then saying that I have read The Doublers by James Joyce. I got through that all right. But Sabbath's Theater by Philip Roth. I got on a real Philip Roth kick for a while, reading through several of his books, The Plot Against America, Goodbye Columbus, American Pastoral. But Sabbath's Theater, it came up in my queue, and it was just you had a main character that I just couldn't get on the side of. He was just so lecherous and so detestable that I I mean, I'm nowhere near as much of a lech as he is, but it made me feel dirty hearing his stories, and so I really wasn't a fan of that book. In fact, I think it shows how I am about reading. If I enjoyed a book, reading it, and put it up with quibbles, I'll probably give it 5 stars. If it's okay, and there are moments that drag, maybe 4. Sabbath Theater, the writing was okay. I just hated the characters, and it just went on. I felt a bit too long. I gave that 3 stars, so I won't even go my personal ratings. I won't even go that low on a book that I dislike. So I'm a little bit odd that way. But yeah, so that's where I am in reading right now. Like I said, next up will be a book by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And probably back to, I'm sure I got some more Neil Gaiman, more Philip Roth coming up, more Michael Chabon. They're my 3 main authors I keep diving into the well with right now. But then for more nonfiction, I got more Dava Sobel coming up. I already read The Planets, and I've added to my wish list a few other books by her. Some I'm on the waiting list for. Some you may not have heard of, like there's a book by an old friend of mine from college, Dan Zach, Almighty, Courage, Resistance, and Existential Peril in the Nuclear Age. I look forward to reading that when I can get a chance to. Let's see, look at the list. A lot of Joseph J. Ellis. I got during the end of last year, particularly after the election, I read a lot of Joseph J. Ellis by way of audiobooks. It's always interesting getting a little bit more insight into certain periods in our history. I'm a bit of a history nut, and learning more could be a very interesting thing. You'll really get it. Obviously, I just finished Hemings' Monticello. Before that, Writes a Man by Thomas Paine, and then you add that to the books of Joseph J. Ellis, and I got a pretty good background on early American history. And there's a lot of stuff I already knew, but there's a lot of stuff that I learned that's more interesting. So it's all about enriching myself through my reading, just as I'm enriching my body through exercise and eating healthier and just overall taking better care of myself as much as I can. Obviously, I don't get enough sleep, and question some other decisions, but physically and mentally, for the most part, trying to you know improve my feelings and everything. So that's why I've really dove into reading, and I've always been a reader. I've always had something I've been reading. I mean, I read the news every day. I've had newspaper subscription. In the past, I've had magazine subscriptions. I spend a good chunk of time online on Facebook, on uh, WashingtonPost.com, on several other news sites. I try to have a diverse news look. I don't watch cable news. I read. That way I can bring in knowledge of my own thing. So, what are you reading? What do you like to read? What's your favorite book right now? What's the most recent book that you liked? What's the most recent book you hate? I want to hear all about it. Obviously, we got some great books at aois21 that I'd be happy to tell you about if you had any questions, because we are an open genre publishing company. So anything that comes along, anybody that comes along that wants to pitch their story for them, I'm pretty open to hearing. The Virginia Festival of the Book is coming up this weekend down in Charlottesville. We won't be attending this year. We had to miss out last year because I was feeling ill, but we went 2 years ago and had a great time. It was actually our first book fair when we went 2 years ago. Last year the illness took me out, and this year we just decided that we wanted to focus more of our attention on the upcoming book fairs in the DC area. So we'll be at Kensington Day of the Book in Kensington, Maryland on April 24th. Our application is in for the Gaithersburg Book Festival in Gaithersburg, Maryland in May, but we haven't heard yet whether that's happening, whether we will be in attendance, so we'll find out about that. But I always try, when people come to my table, when I meet people in public at book events, ask them what do they like to read. Not necessarily what their favorite book is, but just what do they like to read. And of course, that's self-serving, because pretty much whatever they say, I could say, hey, I got a book for you. Okay, I like reading history. Oh, I've got a biography here for you. I like fantasy. Oh, I've got a fantasy book. I like sci-fi. Ooh, I got 2 sci-fi books. Obviously, that's my way of having an icebreaker with anyone while coming by my table or at events, but it's all trying a connection, but also at a lot of these events, we're all connected by our love of reading. We're all connected by our ability, well, obviously our ability to read. We're very fortunate to be very literate. Am I con? I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean there. We're very fortunate in the United States to have a high literacy rate. In fact, DC being the most well-read city in America, which is an interesting stat considering the fact we don't have a single chain bookstore. We don't have a Barnes & Noble. We don't have a Books A Million. We don't have an Amazon Books. All of our bookstores are independent bookstores in Washington, D.C., and we're a very well-read city. Helps that we have a lot of people with higher education degrees. But yeah, tell me what you're reading. Tell me what you like to read, because it's a good way to find people you connect with. I mean, I'm pretty open reader on things. I've read sci-fi, I've read fantasy, and there is a difference between the two. I don't like when bookstores and organizations lump those two together. I like history. I like sports. I recently read a memoir of a hockey player named John Scott, who was an unlikely choice for the NHL All-Star game last year, and afterwards he wrote the story of his career in the NHL, and especially getting picked for that All-Star game in which he ended up winning MVP. And it was an interesting story just because when I would watch John Scott play, I considered him a goon. So actually reading a book by him was an interesting adventure, right? An interesting experience, and I didn't have a favorable opinion of him as a player. So reading his book kind of let me into his mind, because that's when you're reading someone's book, that's what you are. You're in that person's mind. You're in their thinking. So when you're obviously reading fiction, you're seeing, and that fiction isn't all imaginary because it has to be informed by our life experiences. So you're getting into that person's mind and a bit into the life they've lived. You always have to see what what some have called a kernel of truth in the fiction. What's the actual point that happened? It comes to mind, there was, I believe it was Arthur C. Clarke. I'm not sure. I think it was one of the sci-fi writers. There was a short story he wrote based off of he was out for a walk in LA and got stopped by police, because nobody goes for a walk in LA. At least this was late 70s or into the 80s. And he was just alarmed by the fact that the police would stop him merely because he was walking. So he wrote a short story off of that based in a future where, someone was out for a walk and the police arrested him. So it's just, that's your experiences come into that, and that includes the experiences you get from reading. I know personally I'm a better writer when I'm watching The West Wing. Aaron Sorkin's dialogue just sort of gets my mind thinking in very artistic ways. I'm a better writer when I'm reading stuff that is very good, strong language, very smart, very not so much not specifically entertaining, but energetic and inspiring. So I read a lot of poetry and I always find good inspiration in that. And obviously, if you listen to our poetry podcast, Passion on the Page, I've had a few, I do creative inspiration episodes where I read some poetry that inspires me, like Howl by Allen Ginsberg or Nobody Knows It by Me by Patrick O'Leary. And, Alfred Lord Tennyson, The Charge of a Light Brigade. Most recently, we did Times They Are Changing by Bob Dylan. I know, not technically a poem, but hey, he's won Nobel Prize for Literature. So the Nobel Committee believes he's a poet. So just get into the lyrics and not just listen to the song. And yeah, there's elements of being a poet in there. So let's see, Twitter. See my video playback on Twitter. It keeps on turning me sideways. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, no questions on Twitter. I see we've had a couple of people watching on Periscope. What are you guys reading? Let me know. Love to hear about it. And of course, we're broadcasting on Periscope and on YouTube. In the past, I've gotten bizarre requests on Periscope, and under the thinking that the person saying, I'm the only person here, not knowing we're on YouTube too. So, and not only on YouTube, but the video on YouTube will get saved to our aois21 YouTube channel after the fact. So you'll be able to go back and watch this. I realize I'm not doing anything too educational here. I'm just, as in the past, where the topics I would talk about is, plans for going for book fairs, building a promotional campaign, or cover design, or editing, all the key things that go into making a book. That's what we do with a lot of these webcasts. But tonight I wanted to just talk about what are you reading? You go to the New York Times bestseller list. The most recent New York Times bestseller list had number 1 is The Shack by William P. Young. Now, the thing is, it's been on the bestseller list for over 7 weeks and just now made it to the top of the heap. There is, I've seen Frederick Backman's A Man Called Of's been on the bestseller list for 42 weeks and it's gone up and down. And then I've seen new books come and go. Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman just came out 5 weeks and it's gone up to the top and back down again. Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance on nonfiction is back up to number 2. It's been up and down the list over the past 33 weeks. And of course, the New York Times bestseller list has been troubling because it used to have several great lists, but now it's down to just a total of, 11 lists. It used to have close to 20. We go over them for our weekly podcast literally this week. And yeah, that segment where we read the bestseller list has gotten a lot shorter than it used to. Okay, so it's 8:58. I know I started this thing a couple minutes late, but I see our lone watcher on Periscope has gone away. I must have scared him away when I started talking about the New York Times. Sorry. Oh, okay. So yeah, if you have any other any questions, always available at aois21 or me personally at KF Shovelin. Love to hear stories about what you're reading, especially if you're reading an aois21 title. I definitely want to hear about it. Not only do I want to hear about it, but I want the world to hear about it. So be sure to go to Goodreads, leave a review, or leave one on Amazon.com or iBooks or Google Play or wherever you picked up your books, Smashwords, Kobo, Nook Press. If you're reading one of our books and you like it, leave a review. I make sure I rate the books I read, the audiobooks and or book, the written books. I mean the paper, print books I read. I don't always leave a full review, but I do make sure I leave a rating because those matter. Those count. So be kind. Rate kindly. Okay, the time I have is 8:59 p.m. on this Tuesday, March 21st, 2017. I am Keith F. Shovelin, publisher and chief creative of aois21 Publishing. Thank you very much for joining me. As I said, this broadcast going out to the world on Periscope and YouTube will be saved on the aois21 YouTube channel. I see no reason why it won't work. When we did this back in January, for some reason there were issues with it not properly saving the file, but we did it a slightly different way this time, so hopefully that won't be an issue. But feel free to check this out. And we'll be back next month, April 21st. I'm sure you will probably have a topic. It'll be 2 days before we go to Kensington for the Kensington Day of the Book. So you can watch the webcast Friday night, the 21st, and then come on out Sunday, the 23rd. What did I say? Hold on, let me make sure I got the exact date on that. Yeah, Sunday the 23rd from 11 to 4 in Kensington, Maryland on the main street. We'll have a tent. We'll have a few of our creatives there signing books, talking about writing, talking about what they like to read. Love a good conversation. So if you're going to be in the Kensington, Maryland area or just in the greater DC area, you should make it out to Kensington. Be happy to be there to talk to you. And of course, for that. One other thing I do want to bring up. This Thursday night, the 23rd, if you're interested, we have on WDOS Internet Radio, we have Sex, Vex, Perplex Live. That's our podcast, Sex, Vex, Perplex with the Modern Whore, hosted by Eileen Vega, who writes as The Modern Whore, author of Dating as Told by the Modern Whore. She will be live on WDOS Internet Radio at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock Eastern Time, Thursday night, WDOSradio.net. Usually her podcast airs that time weekly, but this week she will be live taking your calls. Oh, thank you very much for all the hearts. That's just fantastic. So yeah, if you're interested in that, check that out Thursday night. Otherwise, check out any of the great podcasts we have from aois21 at media.aois21.com, aois21.com. And as always, you can reach out to me on Twitter at aois21, facebook.com/aois21, or email pub@aois21.com. But thank you for watching. Thank you for joining in, the one person who asked a question. And well, that is a lot of hearts. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm signing off now. Have a good night. See you next month. For aois21 Publishing, I'm Keith F. Shevlin, Publisher and Chief Creative. And everyone, keep reading.